Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here this morning. This morning we're going to take some testimony from members of BSEA regarding the Department for Children and Families. And just because it's the first time I think people have been in the committee this year, at least testifying, we'll do just a quick round of introductions like we like to do. So I'm Teresa Wood from Waterbury, and I also serve Bolton, Buellscore, and Huntington.
And Ray Garofano from Essex and Essex Junction.
I'm Jubilee McGill, and I'm from Bridgeport, and also serve Middlebury, New Haven, and Weybridge.
And I'm Esme Cole of Hartford.
My name is Zon Eastis, and I represent Guilford and Vernon.
Good morning, Todd Nielsen. I represent Brandon Farstad.
Doug Bishop, I represent Colchester's Chittenden 20 District.
Hi, good morning. I represent Rutland City.
Good morning, Dan Noyes, represent Wolcott, Hyde Park, Johnson, and Belvedere.
And Donahue, Northfield, and also Berlin.
And then we go right around the outside.
Steve Howard, I'm the Executive Director of the Vermont State Employees Association.
Good morning. I'm Amy Bertrand, the President of the Vermont State Employees Association and 25-year state employee with DCF Economic Services. Can you again how my actions are goals? Zoe from Delaney, I work with them. Brenda Siegel, the Executive Director at Helplessness Vermont. Lori Morse, Community Assistant.
Thank you. So this morning we're going to be hearing, I think, from Amy first. Is that what we're doing? Or are we going to?
I think, Madam Chair, sorry, I'll go first.
Yeah, absolutely.
Follow.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes, please join us.
At least we've got the sunshine, right? That's a good sign.
Exactly.
Unpack all my belongings here. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I think we already did introductions, but just out of habit, I'm Steve Howard, Executive Director of the Vermont State Employees Association. We represent the frontline workers in state government and in the Department for Children and Families. I want to just start by explaining a concept to you that's, I think, going to be very important. There is a term called concerted activity, which is activity that a union member takes in with their union on behalf of their union. And it is protected in state law, it's protected in federal law, and it's protected in the contract. And so I'm here as an employee of the Vermont State Employees Association, so it doesn't apply to me, but President Bertrand is here. And you'll hear her say this when she comes to the table on her own time, representing the Vermont State Employees Association as the president of the Vermont State Employees Association. And so she is protected by state and federal law. And so we hope that that will be respected by the administration once she has completed her testimony. I have with me just a couple of things that I wanted to go through with you. First, from the Family Services Division, I did reach out to our members there, and they are, we have a pretty robust labor management committee, and they said, we want to do a comprehensive survey, and we'll provide that to the committee later. We don't want to do anything off the cuff without really opening it up to all of our members. But I can give you, from the conversations I had with them, just some top line ideas that really have been repetitive themes over the last year or so that have been coming to the union in a variety of atmospheres. So they will provide that survey. We'll do the survey, put it together for them, and we'll get it to you, and you can take a look at it down the road. One thing that they wanted me to just express to you is that their caseloads, that we need to rethink how we count caseloads. Right now, we are counting the number of families that a family service worker has. But there are different types of families. There are families that have one parent and one child. There are families that have 10 children and 10 parents. And it is the acuity of those cases differ greatly. And, most children are placed when they're in state custody with another relative. And so if you have different families With a child, there could be 10 different families where a child is placed. So we need to really revamp how we count caseloads. And the second is that there are no services for children in the communities. There's no therapy for children. There's no childcare for children. There's no nothing for children. And it really makes it difficult for them to do the social work that they want to do to help bring families back together and create a healthy environment. The case aides, they cannot fill positions for case aides, which could alleviate a lot of administrative work that family service workers are doing rather than social work. Because they, for whatever reason, we need to really focus on hiring more case aides and making sure that we fill those vacancies. The foster care system, we need more foster care in Vermont. And one concept we've talked to the administration about, talked with each other about, is the idea of creating professional foster parents, folks who could do foster care full time and make a living doing foster care. Cream of the crop, really well-trained, really experienced foster care. We need to look at that. Right now, the folks in DCF who are supporting the foster care system, and I just have to say, because our members took to heart the chair's comments last year when she apologized about the way in which the closure of Woodside came about and the misinformation provided to this committee. At that time, the administration testified that the answer was going to be more foster care, that foster care was going to be a major component. One thing that came to light after that is that the foster care parents in this state are recruited and supported by temporary employees who work 20 hours a week. We don't have a robust system of folks out there recruiting and training and supporting foster parents. So to have them come here and say that was going to be the answer, which seems great, and then not tell you the truth about the fact that they really aren't putting the resources into supporting those foster parents or recruiting them, has resulted in the disaster that we have had in the high-end system of care, which is mitigating a bit. And our members are really excited about that. We hope it stays. We're knocking on wood, because it was several years of torture for our members. I mentioned concerted activity at the beginning of my presentation, and we have had some differences with the leadership of the department about what concerted activity they have a right to know about. So, for instance, if we're having a meeting like we did in Rutland with legislators to describe what the conditions are, Representative, you may have even been there.
I was, yes.
That is a union meeting where our members are coming on their own time to describe to legislators who they have a right to vote for, and just explain to them, what children in Rutland County need. That's concerted activity that's protected. We don't have to get permission from the management or tell the management what's happening in that meeting. It's just none of their business. There's a wall there. We got a lot of pressure from the management of FSD about that meeting. Our members took a lot of heat for daring to speak to their legislators. And then it was explained to us that they objected to a number of things that the union has done, which are all come under the umbrella of concerted activity. So it's an issue. Ironically, the deputy commissioner for family services is a labor lawyer, and she clearly knows what concerted activity is. It's very basic concept. So I just put it out there because it's something you're going to hear more about. That's just the Family Services Division.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So I'm not familiar with some of these terms, even though they're basic in the labor world. When there's a disagreement between an employer and employees about whether an activity falls under concerted effort or concerted activity, is there a method to resolve that disagreement? Or are you just kind of like, one party says this and the other party says that, and you agree to disagree? I don't know. Is there some sort of labor management process that resolves that?
The ultimate arbiter of that would be the Vermont Labor Relations Board, and then with a right to appeal to the Supreme Court. So if there was ultimately a disagreement, that usually it ends up, we fight with each other and we go to battle. But if they were to take some kind of action for what we believe is concerted activity, and that's happened in the past, we would go to the Vermont Labor Relations Board, we would go to court and defend our members' rights to meet together, work together, advocate as a team. That's what a union is all about. So there seems to be a need for maybe education or enforcement of the right of a union to exist and the right of union leaders to partake in their protected rights. That seems to be something the management, from our perspective, needs to work on. And we've made that clear to them. So that's not this. This would not be a surprise to them.
No, thank you. I'm always learning new terms and
Sure.
trying to understand them. Thank
Sure.
you.
So I wanted to switch gears a little bit to the Economic Services Division. And this is going to be very difficult. I'm just going to be honest with you. We're experiencing, and our members are experiencing, a very challenging time in that department. And we reached out to our members and asked if they'd like to come forward, if they would like to provide a statement. We had a lot of response that people were just too afraid, that they feared retaliation and they feared the loss of their job or other punitive sanctions for speaking out. And so I do have a statement that came to me from a member who asked to offer it anonymously. And I have some other comments that I'd like to share with you. Generally, I think what you'll hear is that our members feel they're working in what is developed as an authoritarian top-down environment in which fear is used as a weapon to control their employees. We start from the premise, and you all know this from all the work you do, that the work that our folks do on the front lines in economic services is some of the most difficult work in state government. Sitting in front of a family with children and saying, we can't house you. You don't qualify. You can't feed you. You don't qualify. These are the folks who did not make the rules, but they're enforcing the rules. It is so difficult. And over time, it takes a toll. And we, from VSEA, tragically, a few short years ago, lost one of our board members who died by suicide, worked in economic services for years. The work itself takes a toll. When you layer on top of that, the idea that you're afraid to say anything about how you think the performance of the department might improve or anything you're experiencing as an employee, because you're afraid of the deputy commissioner, it makes it almost completely intolerable. And our field reps who work with these folks I try to hire field reps that have mental health backgrounds, and they needed it. They need it all across state government. But in the past few months in particular, they've needed it for our members in economic services who've called desperately seeking help from their union. So with that, I think I'd like to just share the words of this member who there's a couple of comments from members. And I don't know who this person is. So I can't tell you the name. And even if you tried to force me, I couldn't produce the name. I don't know who it is. I do know, I was verified from a credible source, that this is a long-term employee of the Economic Services Division. I've worked for the division for over 2 decades. Never in my entire career have I seen a workforce so demoralized and fearful as in this last year. Deputy Commissioner Miranda Gray, along with a few employees she has pulled into her orbit, have created a culture of fear and retaliation that has damaged the division beyond repair and healing. The deputy commissioner has betrayed the trust of hundreds of employees by pretending to care about their well-being and then turning against them when they shared what meant most to them in their jobs. The Department for Children and Families can and should should do so much better for the children and families of their own employees. The deputy commissioner spent months doing listening tours in the districts where employees shared though busy, the work-life balance of being able to telework a couple days a week was invaluable to their well-being and their ability to present for their families, to be present for their families. She then usurped a division leadership meeting, which was already planned with a set agenda, to publicly shame hardworking employees and tell them that they would no longer be able to telework with 2 weeks' notice. Almost everybody commented to me that it was how it was done that was so detrimental. Public servants who have given their dedication to the betterment of Vermont families for decades were told that they were not serving Vermonters. Supervisors returned to offices where employees were in tears, scared and angry. They were simply never given the chance to improve prior to this with concrete data or solutions. In fact, real solutions that were suggested by employees with many years of experience were dismissed as, quote, too time consuming, end quote, or simply ignored. The deputy commissioner operates as if she has all the answers. Publicly, she may pretend that she is open to suggestions and feedback, but that openness only goes so far as to serve her own career, control, and advancement. The culture of fear created by the deputy commissioner and her allies has meant that people are terrified to speak up. People are terrified because they have been asked to name names of employees who disagree. They have overheard conversations about problem employees who disagree. They have been told exactly what wording they are allowed to use to describe things. Any disagreement is met with defensiveness at best and retaliation at worst. As the workforce has gotten increasingly disgruntled and has continued to share their discontent with the telework decision, and more importantly, how disrespectfully it was done, the deputy commissioner has responded in turn by tightening the reins to a point where people can barely do their jobs. Examples include denying sick leave, denying reasonable accommodations across the board, not allowing supervisors to complete reasonable accommodation support paperwork, as is the normal practice, requiring district staff to report on exactly what they're doing every hour of the day, denying any type of reasonable flex time, removing responsibilities from seasoned employees, and denying professional development opportunities that previously would have been approved. Layered on top of this fear and retaliation is a blatant hypocrisy, where the deputy commissioner expects more of division employees than she does of herself or her allies. While preaching accountability and serving Vermonters, she demonstrates a cruelty to her own Vermonters and an abhorrent disregard for others' needs. Videos are shown at meetings on how to be a good leader that directly contradict their actions. Yet anyone who says anything about these contradictions is scoffed and scolded. All flexibility is denied for most employees, while her own allies are allowed every flexibility they wish to be, and with every flexibility they wish, and are allowed to be with their families, work remotely, change their schedules. Even something as simple as being present at meetings has different standards, as the deputy commissioner doesn't bother to demonstrate a respect for the other people's time or attention, failing to show up without an apology or an explanation, spending the time she does when she does show up consumed with her phone on more important matters. People who have been longtime employees of the division are leaving, all citing leadership in their decisions. Not all are offered exit interviews, and for those who are, they have said that they were encouraged to sugarcoat their answers for why they were leaving. I've heard people say things such as, "I will never trust Miranda Gray again. I've never felt so sad to go to work every day. I'm trying so hard to do my best for the people we serve, but it's so hard. How can I be at my best for others when I'm treated like I don't matter? I have no choice but to leave. I used to be proud to work here, and now I'm just embarrassed." ESD is filled with good public servants who care deeply about their neighbors, Vermonters, and their coworkers. One of the reasons I've stayed in the past has been working with such a dedicated group of people. That time has come to an end. There is no way that a division hurting so badly and so poorly trusted by their leadership can possibly provide good service to Vermonters. In the deputy commissioner's own words, it is not a moral failing of the workforce. It is a universe universal human condition that we cannot be at our best when we are being treated like we don't matter. I hope for the sake of my coworkers and for the sake of Vermonters, serious action is taken to find new leadership for this division that is the kind of leadership these phenomenal employees deserve. And then some other comments that were submitted to us in sort of questioning what's the environment you're working in and whether you feel the same sentiments of fear and retaliation. I think we definitely have seen it, and some have felt it and are feeling it. I'm sure it's much bigger than I've heard or seen. Alternate schedules being revoked, more tracking mechanisms created with some very blunt words of "you're not doing your job," specific job duties being given to others to lighten your load. But here are two things we will replace it with. The need to track every minute of your workday in order to be able to show that you're doing what you're doing. And if at 10:53 a.m., when your teams turned yellow because you were looking through a manual for guidance or you had to use the restroom, you couldn't wait for a lunch break. I wonder, this is somebody who was asked about the testimony. I however wonder what negative effect this would have, which is why these things most often go unreported, right? Specific scenarios will only provide motives for backlash. Specifics can be pinpointed to a particular district or person, which is number one thing we heard when we asked people if they wanted to testify, or if they even wanted to write something and present it, have us present it. They were nervous about that. I have no personal experience with directly being impacted by retaliation in economic services. However, I do wonder if this is a good opportunity to discuss how telework was revoked and how they put the blame on frontline staff for operational errors and mismanagement. I believe there is a consensus on our team about being in a culture of management that is sliding into a more accusatory and authoritarian position, where there is continual efforts to track and micromanage our work. Then I have just to submit to you an email from an employee, her last day work at Economic Services, that she has given us permission to share. So I'll definitely send this to you as well. To share those with you. This is from Natalie Santamore. I've worked for ESD so long as it was called DSW when I started. So long that it was called DSW when I started. I was there when we were PATH, and I'm leaving before someone decides to change the stationery again. As I leave, I reflect on my career. Like many of us, over my long career, I've dealt with discrimination, gaslighting, assault, sexual harassment, and a shameful amount of bullying. Like many of us, I've dealt with these things with little or no support, yet stayed because I truly believe this work isn't about me. It's about our clients, and it matters. I'm leaving now to start a new epic adventure and begin the healing process. As I go, I'd like to say to you, what is your job? Despite what they would have you believe, your job isn't about emptying work buckets as fast as possible, avoiding QAs or quote unquote teachable moments. That don't actually teach you anything. Watching the timer while you are working on a case that seemingly presents constant demands that you are proving your work or our leadership's career aspirations and power. Leadership has taken this department down a path that could not be further from the Agency of Human Services or key practices. There isn't much you can do about that, but you can choose to let all of it become background noise. Focus on the person, family, or case in front of you. Do what that person needs you to do. I know getting constantly hit over the head with negativity of QAs and teachable moments and case issues, blah, 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 can wear on you, and it's so easy to recoil and focus on how to make that insanity stop. After all, who wants to be told they suck all day long? I promise you, taking care of the client is what is important. Entering a phone panel might avoid a QA, but telling someone about a heated renter benefit will help a family get their heads above water. Getting through an interview quickly will keep a supervisor from telling you you've gone too long with a client. But taking the time to go over the GA program will help that client make it through the SSI application process without becoming homeless. You can take those "how dare you not be perfect" teachable moments into your heart, or you can hang on to that feeling when a desperate client showed you heartfelt gratitude. Despite the generic "you guys are great" emails and listening tours, when all the decisions have been made, We know eligibility staff is looking at the disposable and interchangeable with no individual worth. But you can decide to see the worth and be a team. There are enough people beating up on us. We don't need to beat up on each other. You can decide not to enter a case note saying how the last guy screwed up. You can decide to deal with a case that needs to be corrected. You can decide to send a quick Teams message to another BPS saying, nice job. When you see a beautifully written, I don't know what this is, CATN, Amy can explain it, that leaves you with no questions. Don't join in on hitting your coworkers over the head. Decide to be a team. No matter what noise gets thrown in your direction, remember the person you are thinking of sending that email about or entering the case note about is dealing with all the same noise. Decide to be a team. Decide to focus on the client in front of you. Decide what is important. Breathe, have compassion. Know the noise doesn't decide who you are. Please take care of yourselves and our clients. I'm off. So as you can tell, it's a very difficult situation. It's for our members, very emotional. And it has serious consequences for the people who come to the state, your constituents, desperate for help. It's hard to have members treated this way and to have it be so consistent that you know it's not just an isolated incident. So we come to you and we ask for your help. This is something you need to know because it affects the delivery of the programs you work so hard on. But we also ask that when people speak out, when leaders speak out, when they come to testify in your committee, and then the retaliation begins, we ask you to use your influence and your power to stand up and fight back alongside the workers who will protect every single one of our leaders who dares to tell the truth. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Questions for Steve at this point in time? One of the things that I'm wondering about when I worked in state government, they had periodically done, I don't know if to call them satisfaction surveys or whatever, but HR or, within AHS, all the different departments were surveyed and stuff. And is that still going on? Do you know?
Yes.
And so are there results of that shared with departments and divisions within departments?
Yes, and I think I may defer that the actual answer to that
Okay.
to the president because she
Okay.
will have more experience with that.
Okay.
But I can say our members just across state governments look at those surveys with trepidation. And
Do they wonder if they're really confidential? Is that
they wonder about that,
okay?
but they also get frustrated because there's survey after survey after survey and then no change. So, a lot of people say, I'm not filling out surveys anymore. We've expressed to the management, and this is not just this administration, it's previous administrations. We've expressed to the management what the issues are and nothing gets changed. So I'm just not bothered. I don't know if that's true in economic services or in DCF across the board. But there's a lot of skepticism about this.
Yeah. Representative Bishop.
I'll just share some insights on that question, and then I have a question for you, Steve. I was recently following up and inquiring about some survey information, and as it looked like they had by department within AHS, so I was just able to see DCF as a whole does not break it down further into the divisions. But those numbers for DCF as a whole were consistently below state averages for employee response. However, we may gauge those state responses anyhow. So it seems like there's more work to get down to specific divisions, perhaps. Question about the union's representation. How does that work? How many workers are there within DCF? If you know that number, I'm sure it was shared with me at some point at the beginning of the session. And is union representation 10%, 50%, 100% of those employees?
So I can get that specific data to you. There's about 1,000 employees in DCF. I don't know what their membership breakdown is. I can get that for you, and I will. and this is not the question you asked, but it occurred to me. So we were very involved and received a number of calls, and you heard it in the testimony from this member around the change in the telework policy. And this is an example, I think, of how not to do it. First of all, there was a meeting of supervisors. All the supervisors in the state were called to the central office and were told that in the meeting, while they're in the meeting, that in 30 minutes, an email is going to be sent out to your staff telling them that telework is over. Telework was advertised to a lot of the folks who were hired as part of the benefit of the job, and people planned their lives around it. People desperate to find childcare, people finding housing, an hour and a half away from central office or from their work site because housing is hard to find, panicked, and there was nobody in their offices to answer any questions or to calm them down or to advocate on their behalf. And unfortunately, in the meeting with the supervisors, the general feeling that we received was that these supervisors, some of them with close to 30 years of experience, were treated like children. One was told, "We've heard enough out of you," when they tried to ask questions about this policy that they thought was going to be detrimental to the agency. The way to do that, from our perspective, was to say, okay, let's say there are problems that we want to address. The way to do that is to say, okay, is this a broad situation, or do we have particular places where we have to address this? And then how about we go to the people doing the work and sit them down and say, here's our challenge. Do you have ideas about how we could fix this? How could we do this? What could we do to maintain that thing that people have expressed in the listening tour as being vital to their employment for DCF, which was the ability to telework on a hybrid schedule? Inclusivity of the folks on the front lines in the decision-making and compassion for the lives that they live is important. When people feel valued, they work harder and they do more. When they feel devalued, they give up. They feel deflated. So that's an example of how this could have been managed. And even now, what VSEA has said to the management is, what do we have to do to bring telework back? Like, what needs to change? What is it that you need? What can we do to figure this out? And so we're waiting for that answer. So that's just a description of the management style that I think has caused a huge problem.
Thank you. Representative Garfano.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve, for being here and representing the members of the union. Full disclosure, I am a union member of the VSEA, proud member, and I work at DCF.
One of our favorite members.
A couple questions. So I have a little bit more insight in like the workings of DCF because I work there when I'm not here. So a couple questions. One, so the DCF central office has like someone that works on workforce and recruitment and, employee relations. Do you know if that person or the central office is at all involved with, employee morale and employee relations and professional development? Like, what is the involvement there? And could that be strengthened? How is that going? Because that's a role that exists, and I'm just wondering if that's being utilized to its fullest potential.
To be honest with you, I'm not an expert on that. I assume that person is doing that work. I will say, and this is true of every department in state government, and I say it a lot in corrections because they run those TV ads that drive me nuts. The best recruiters for the state of Vermont are the employees who work for the state of Vermont. And if they say to their cousin, relative, neighbor, hey, I work for economic services and it's a great place to work, that is going to be more effective than $1 million worth of Facebook ads. And you're going to get a higher quality candidate because it's somebody who a coworker can recommend or somebody who's doing the work. So I have no doubt there's somebody in central office doing that. I have no idea how it's going. But I do know that whatever is being done right now, it's not working. It's not enough. We do have a labor management committee, a robust labor management committee. And that process has strengths and weaknesses. It all depends, having worked now over 12 years with 1 million labor management committees. That process is only as successful as the management wants to invest in it. If they take what is being said and go with it, they can, those can be really a fruitful process. It's a contractual process. And I don't want to say that VSEA's relationship with the Agency of Human Services is all bad. We've had a great working relationship with Kristen McClure, who's been working with us on the FSD side and has made a big difference. She's made a big difference in a lot of the challenges that were faced there. But it's going to require outside leadership intervening here to change the atmosphere people are working in and to offer more supports for the people who are working there.
And can I follow up on the telework? So I remember when all that transpired, but I'm curious if you know, does the management and leadership, are they teleworking at all? And is the telework policy only applied to the people that work in district offices, or is it at central office as well?
I'm going to defer that to President Bertrand. I think she probably has more knowledge. I have heard anecdotally that the management, and you heard it in the testimony of the member, that the management does telework, and that there are certain folks who are perceived as on their team who are allowed to telework. I believe the call center is allowed to telework. So it's a little bit, it's disparate based on it, but.
Were there, I'm just trying to figure out, Arette, so, that was like one decision, but I guess I'm hearing an undercurrent in the information that you've shared, both what you've read and what you've shared, that it doesn't feel like it's about that one decision. It feels like it's a sort of something that people are feeling and sensing that sort of permeates the work culture in the division.
Yes.
And I'm just trying to figure out, usually when people make a decision to, make a sort of major shift in the workplace, there's a rationale for it, there's a reason for it. And do you have the sense, and maybe this is more something to ask Amy about, but
She is the expert.
Yeah. Was there, I'm just wondering kind of like what data was presented to say like, okay, this isn't working. So what was not working about it? Did they not have a sufficient number of, was the call times too lax? Was there people not, seeing their clients as often as they were supposed to be? Or, what was the, I guess, issue that was trying to be resolved other than into the office?
I think that's part of the question we have. And we had at the time, what are the issues that you are talking about? They were talking about improved customer service, but they were not clear about what those issues are. They were talking about foot traffic, which is not a thing in every district office. And so to the point you were making, Madam Chair, which is exactly on target. If there are issues, and there are going to be issues in the management of state government, and human services is so complicated and difficult. The best way to resolve those issues is to include everybody in the discussion about the process. Now, we understand that we're not going to get 100% of what we suggest or 100% of what we ask for. But to say you're the fault, it's your fault, frontline workers, it's your fault, DPSs, you're not doing your job, and we're going to revoke this, and we're not even going to tell you what the problems are or ask you what the solutions might be. It goes to the underlying current you're talking. That's the style that is pervasive throughout the division from our members' perspective.
Any other questions for Mr. Howard? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Amy.
No, so distinguished. It brings the answer.
Only here for the.
Your kids.
My children. It's school vacation week.
Yeah.
You never know.
I've seen lots of little kids around the building.
I tried to bring mine with me and they were like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Amy Bertrand. I am the president of the Vermont State Employees Association, the executive vice president of the Vermont State Labor Council, AFL-CIO, 25-year state employee with the majority of that tenure in DCF Economic Services. I am currently 100% home-based, and that is as of maybe just shy of a year. I'm going to take my glasses off. I am here today on my own accord. I am hoping to have protections of concerted activity because of my role of president. I sat down probably 3 or 4 times, shaking. I sat down probably 3 or 4 times to draft remarks for today, but had to get up because I can't. I can't do it. And I think that speaks to the volumes of my experience because those who know me in this room probably know me as being pretty gregarious, right? And unshaken when it comes to workers' rights and protections and things. But when it comes to myself and my own experience as a single mom with kids in the house, my job is what feeds my kids and pays my mortgage. So this is hard. So I'm going to start by reading a statement from a colleague, and then I'll speak to my experience, hopefully. Dear Vermont House Committee on Human Services, I am writing to address the lack of support from the Deputy Commissioner of ESD and the disregard I have experienced as a long-term employee of the state of Vermont. When I raised concerns about the unequal treatment regarding remote work accommodation, I sought answers through HR. In response, HR filed a complaint against the Deputy Commissioner for discrimination. However, instead of a fair and transparent review, my complaint was dismissed by the Commissioner without a meaningful follow-up or any effort to address my concerns. The complete lack of acknowledgement reinforced the pattern of disregard for my circumstances and the significant challenges I face as a caregiver. Before the pandemic, I was granted full remote status by former Commissioner Ken Schatz with the flexibility to attend staff meetings via phone. However, this arrangement was overturned by the new administration, Miranda Gray, as Deputy Commissioner, without any explanation or regard for my needs or the needs of my disabled adult son for who I am the sole caregiver. Attending in-person staff meetings has been extremely difficult without proper support, yet I have made it work despite the challenges. As my life circumstances evolved, I reached out to HR regarding a possible relocation. I was informed that the state employs individuals who reside outside Vermont and that multiple units within ESD hire fully remote, out-of-state workers. I was specifically advised that Maine was a potential option. With the approval of my supervisor, director, operations director, and union, I submitted a request to work remotely from Maine. However, this request was denied again, without consideration for my personal situation or the precedent set by other employees in similar circumstances. The union had also supported this request with a non-precedent setting agreement, which was subsequently rejected. Last year, my mother fell ill. Following proper procedures, I requested permission to work remotely from her home in upstate New York to be by her side. My request was ignored entirely. Tragically, she passed away on Father's Day in 2024. I never received any communication, resolution, or apology for being ignored. Months later, my director informed me that employees are allowed to reside in border states as long as they can fully fulfill their job responsibilities. I have repeatedly made it clear that I am fully capable of meeting my job requirements while living out of state, yet my previous requests were ignored without explanation or follow-up. In seeking answers, I reached out to HR to understand why my situation was treated differently from that of my colleagues. HR subsequently filed a complaint against the Deputy Commissioner for discrimination, but once again, my concerns were left silent. The complaint was again dismissed by the Commissioner without a meeting or substantive follow-up. Once again, my concerns were met with silence. I feel the lack of my communication and follow-through was retaliatory and I am concerned today that my statement will again hold negative consequences. I have dedicated 15 years of service to the state of Vermont, consistently receiving excellent evaluations. Throughout this time, my supervisor director and operations director have supported my ability to work remotely. However, the current administration has failed to extend the same level of support to me as they do to others, despite my documented needs as both a caregiver and committed employee. Again, I must question if the lack of communication and professionalism is retaliatory from the deputy commissioner because I filed a complaint with the commissioner. I also wonder if now he's had more time to become acclimated with his role, if he'd have a different outcome or opinion in this matter. As a worker in human services, I assist families facing the same struggles I experience, families who turn to public assistance because they cannot work outside their home. It is disheartening that an agency designed to support individuals in need does not apply the same principles to its own employees. Patricia Robb. Okay, sorry, I'm not trying to be dramatic, but deep breath. I jotted down some things as Steve was speaking, and I will try to speak bluntly. So I've been with economic services for a number of years, also when it was DSW and PAC, which Natalie's email a couple of weeks ago received on a Friday afternoon at 4:29. I bawled my eyes out because it articulated so well how I think so many of us feel but are afraid to say out loud. I have upset many people in my lifetime, right? Speaking out on behalf of employees. I am not afraid to grab that megaphone. I am not afraid to call out inequities. I'm not afraid of any of that. And when the revocation of telework was announced in October, before I could even like really process that, my phone started to ring, right? I'm not just the president of the union. I am over a decade-long steward for our department. I have served in different activism type roles in our union for over 2 decades. People feel pretty comfortable speaking to me. I got phone calls, text messages, direct messages. I think DMs is the hip term on social media from folks because people were afraid to use their work email, right? Some people are afraid to use Teams. It sounds crazy to say it out loud, but there's reason, right? People were, I don't even know the word to describe people's reaction to the revocation of telework. And it was a 2 weeks notice. And when I say revocation of telework, people were not 100% working from home. The model that was deployed in economic services at that point was a hybrid one. So the expectation was that workers were working in the district office a couple of days a week and working from home the others, providing work-life balance. And I say that because I feel so privileged to be able to work from home 100% of the time. If I take a bad phone call, I could take my dogs for a walk. I could get up and make a cup of tea. When you're working in the district office, the culture is very different. Revocation of telework meant that people had to scramble to find out if their childcare center, which already is at capacity, could take their kids full time instead of the 2 days a week. Childcare facilities can't do that, right? They had to find assisted care for their parents that live in their household. Like people's lives were just immediately disrupted. And the reasoning or the rationale behind the revocation wasn't explained. So there wasn't an opportunity for buy-in, which left people even more chaotic. You can't fix the problem if you aren't able to identify it. I had a counselor once tell me you have to name it to tame it. So if you're saying we're going to revoke telework because the error rate is such that we really need people to come back to the work site so we can work on this, or because supervision is going to look different, or because of whatever, that's different than saying because I said so. right? Because I said so. It's more like a toddler throwing a tantrum at the checkout line because they want a Snickers bar and you just want to get home. Telework with, no notice, no explanation. We do have folks that continue to telework, central office teleworks, our housing unit teleworks, our call center teleworks. As an employee of the Department of Children and Families, we're privy to weekly Friday emails from our commissioner. I, speaking my own experience, have found these emails to be ridiculously, almost horrifically tone deaf. Thanking someone for the great job that they do every week is fine and dandy, but not taking steps to improve the working conditions or, I often say, employees just want two things, and that's to feel valued and heard. That's it. I didn't begin my career 25 years ago with the state to get rich. I just wanted to feel valued and heard, and I wanted to do that in human services. I wanted to make life better for other people, and that's gratifying for me. But a weekly email came out from our commissioner, and reading through it, and I'm waiting, and I'm reading, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting for some kind of mention of the telework revocation of ESD, like something, right? Something, nothing. But at the end of that email was a meme from the office. Like, and I was so upset because 2 days prior, we got this revocation email and my phone had been exploding. And how could our commissioner not take advantage of this forum that he knows that people are going to read and address? Even if there's not an answer, right? Even if there's not a, we're taking it back, just name it to tame it. I'm aware that the telework is going away for ESD. We're going to figure out a way to make this like just some kind of acknowledgement, and there wasn't any. And again, this is a Friday email that goes out at like 4:29. And so I read it and I had an immediate reaction to it. And so I knew that my colleagues would too, because I've been hearing from them, right? And they're all in uproar and people are like, I'm going to have to quit. I'm going to walk off the job. I'm going to do all these things. Can we strike? No, you can't. Right? No, I'm hanging up now. And so like, how could he not use this opportunity? So I called our general counsel at VSEA and said to him, explain to me concerted activity. He did. And he said, what are you going to do? And I said, nothing. Yet I'm thinking about responding to this email. Can you help me frame something very short and not anything that could be perceived as threatening, but will be perceived by my members as support? And so wrote a 2-sentence email, something along the line of, I'm disappointed to see that telework isn't mentioned in your email, whatever. And I hit send. It was like 5:39. Made sure to sign it, VSEA president, not ESD, benefit program specialist. And I did respond to all, so it went to all DCF. And I had attached the letter from our VSEA general counsel that they had sent to ESD earlier that week asking to impact bargain around the issue. Impact bargaining is what we do in the off cycle of collective bargaining when there's a change to a working condition. So I sent that, and about an hour later, I got an email response directly to me from the commissioner voicing dismay in my choice of responding to DCF all, which I read and got very scared because I thought, I don't know if he understands what concerted activity is. I better hide. Over the course of the couple days following, I got all kinds of emails back from people. The majority of them were supportive. Thank you for saying something. Have you heard anything? But I did get another email from a different manager who was very upset with me, called me names, and asserted that I had some nefarious plot. And at that point, I was pretty feeling very vulnerable, contemplating sending an email apologizing, right? Which I didn't necessarily want to do because that's a sign of weakness, and decided in that moment that I was going to take a step back and see how the chips fall. A couple of weeks later was our all staff meeting. Economic Services does bi-monthly all staff meetings. It's a Teams meeting. Everybody has to log in, and the policy is that you have to be on camera. So looking forward to that. The agenda was sent, very blasé. And there was a note that questions had to be sent in ahead of time, and that they would not be taking any questions during staff meeting, and they would be revoking the chat function. So that's great. So logged into that meeting. We, as BSCA, had an ESD members meeting, I think 2 days prior to the all staff meeting, where we were answering questions about the telework policy, accommodations and things like that. And there was a consensus of the people that had participating that they wanted to do some sort of solidarity action. So we agreed on having a background. It was a green Vermont background. So as you logged into this all staff meeting that you're required to be on camera, it was super empowering because it was screen upon screen upon screen of my colleagues with this green background, right? So I sat there for an hour and was talked to for an hour about things that we all receive in the weekly newsletter that we get from our workforce director. Not any new information, just sitting there. And the meeting concluded. There was no dialogue around telework, no discussion about anything, no questions. And then the conversation died down around telework. I went out on medical leave in January. And 2 days into my medical leave, I had a call from my supervisor because my evaluation was past due. And he needed to have my evaluation meeting, even though I was on medical leave. So I called in for that. And I have a pretty long tenure with ESD, so I get excellent evaluations, but I was striving for an outstanding. And last year's goalpost for an outstanding was to participate in professional development outside of my job role. So I made sure to do that. So I thought, easy peasy, I'm going to get this outstanding finally. And with an outstanding evaluation, there's a fiscal note. So if you achieve an outstanding, you're able to submit a request to DHR for a pay step increase, which is amazing. Single mom, 2 kids. So I'm listening to my supervisor explain to me my evaluation, and once again, you're doing this and you're doing great here and you're doing great here. And the only thing I really want to talk to you about is your relationship with management. Mind you, I'm on my couch with over 100 sutures, like post-op 48 hours. And I'm like, what? Well, you could work on your relationship with management, but you'll see that in your evaluation. I'll send it to you and just sign it and send it back. Okay. I didn't open my evaluation because I was so off put by that. And here I am giving them time on medical leave. It's a couple weeks before I opened it, and I opened it when I logged in to do my payroll, and I read it and I got an excellent, not an outstanding. And as I scroll through my evaluation, VSEA activity was cited throughout my evaluation. Email response to DCF all regarding telework to Commissioner Winters was cited in my evaluation. And my 4 goals for next evaluation period in order to maintain or to achieve the outstanding: continue to meet, continue to meet, continue to meet. So I've already achieved the 3 goals. And the 4th goal was to improve my relationship with management. I was so angry because after that email response that I got from the commissioner, I was scared, right? And I thought, okay, I'm not going to respond to anything else. I'm still going to do all my union stuff. I'm just not going to spotlight ESC. I'm still going to help people sort through grievances. I'm still going to walk people through the telework policy and help them with their accommodation, but I'm not going to be broadcasting loud and proud. I'm not going to bang the tambourine. I'm going to try to blend. So even though I took these steps back, it's now my evaluation. It's now costing me money, and that's retaliatory. And it clearly violates concerted activity. So I called our attorney, said, I'm sending you my evaluation. I want to pursue this. I could have pursued this in November when I got the other emails from managers, and I didn't because I didn't want to rock the boat. But I want to rock the boat now. He said, okay. I came off of my medical leave in March, first week of March. My first day back, I got an email from the leave management unit that my family medical leave was being audited. When I asked the field rep, VSCA, if she's ever seen that before, she said, never. I was told by my supervisor that he was getting pressure from management about time that I take. What's the process to approve my time? Do I know? Does he know where I am when I use my time? The SEA, with support of the Board of Trustees and our legislative council, filed an unfair labor practice with the Vermont Labor Relations Board on my behalf with all of this stuff in March. A week after we officially filed the unfair labor practice with the Labor Relations Board, I received an email while in supervision with my supervisor from the Department of Human Resources saying that I have been named as a subject of an investigation for violating confidentiality during an all-staff meeting in November of 2024. I participated in the investigation meeting with the general counsel for VSCA, and it was in that meeting that I learned that our staff meetings are on Teams. I told you that. They're not recorded. Like, you don't participate in a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting and they'll tell you it's being recorded. Our meetings are not recorded. Through the investigation meeting, I learned that while our meeting wasn't being recorded, I was being surveilled. And specifically recorded by a cell phone held below the computer screen, focused on me for the meeting. So I never used the blurred background, but I did for this one, silent solidarity action. I have participated in hundreds of meetings, virtual, on Teams and Zoom, probably underestimating, since the pandemic, and I never use a background. My green kitchen cabinets are like notorious in these parts at this point. I have 4 dogs, 3 golden retrievers, and a big black lab. I have a yellow cat that likes to walk across my keyboard. I have kids. I sit in my kitchen because my workstation, my computer goes on a dock, but for these meetings, you're supposed to be on the computer. So I take my computer off the docking station and I sit in my kitchen because 2 of my walls are all windows and there's beautiful light. And I'm Italian, comfortable in the kitchen, and I feel like it's a community thing when I see kitchens. I don't know how to other way to explain it, but I had this blurred background for this meeting. And so for an hour, I was recorded below the screen and surveilled. And there were frozen pictures shown to me in the investigation by the investigator of me turning my head, probably looking at my cat in the window or talking to my dogs. And then another, which my partner walks by to get a cup of coffee because my coffee pot is behind me. I don't know how to process this. I'm still struggling to process this. During the investigation interview, coming to the realization, because you could suspect that you're being surveilled, right? You could assume that every email sent on your state email is being read, or that your teams are being read, or that management knows where you are because your tracker, I literally have to track every minute of my day so my supervisor knows when I use the restroom, shy of how many squares I use. But you could assume that you're being watched, but to concretely see the screen of someone videoing you is a whole different thing. The SEA has asked for the video and to find out who was surveilling me, and recently obtained the video and the name of the person and their management. And I watched the actual video, not just the screenshots. And I was warned not to watch the video because it's creepy, but I watched it anyway. And the unique thing about Teams is you could see yourself in the bottom right screen. And while the PowerPoint presentations of our meeting were going on in the main screen, they had the side panel open where you can only see 12 people at a time. And you could see I'm on screen too, because they click to find me. And then they record just the panel. And you can see them in the bottom right, sound on. You can hear all the noises that they're making. The hmms, the You can see him click on me, click off me, click back on me. I've been a union activist for over 20 years. I have suspected being watched, but I have never concretely seen it. I'm not crying because I'm scared. I'm crying because I'm pissed. Sorry. This is the culture. My investigation report came back unfounded. It dismissed, closed. But the attorney that sent the video and the pictures said that my investigation was prompted by my deputy commissioner, person of operations. So I don't know if they were ordered to fail me
They surveilled me on their own accord. I wasn't investigated for doing a bad job at my job. I wasn't receiving a bad evaluation because I wasn't meeting the threshold. I can say firmly I am being retaliated against because of my activism. I love my job. I have 5 years left before I can retire with a full pension and with dignity. But I am scared because I don't know what's next. And I'm the union president and I have protections. My peers don't. So I'm more scared for them. In the last 2.5 years, I've had 2 colleagues close to me from ESD commit suicide. The job we do is stressful. I cannot stress to you how difficult it is explaining to someone that they've already received the maximum life heap they can for the year. I'm sorry that you're cold. Sorry, I can't increase your food stamps. I understand you've already maxed out your trips to the food shelf. Are there any other community resources? Let's try calling 211 together. Like, it's stressful work that we do to begin with. And to feel like management is after you on top of that is really, really hard. I wish I had answers, but I don't know that I do. And I'm sorry for crying.
You don't need to apologize for feeling what you feel. You definitely do not need to apologize for feeling what you feel. And I guess the one thing that I want to say is that I appreciate the bravery that you are showing in telling your story here. And I know that feels very vulnerable and risky.
I'm assuming they're watching. Like I have assumed.
No, it is, we are live, we're in official testimony, so we are live on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, honestly, for everything that you've gone through. And I think that it's kind of one thing to hear things in abstract. And then it's really different to hear things from the personal stories that we've heard here today, from the people who shared their written words, from you who are sharing your experiences and your fear. I mean, it is what we do in this building relates to what Vermonters expect and how we want to treat Vermonters and how Vermonters can experience a government that is supposed to work for them. And it would be difficult to be that face forward in very difficult work. If you are feeling that environment around you. And so to be there for the people, you know, I'm a former state employee myself, and so I know that sometimes there's a lack of appreciation for state employees, and I know that in DCF in particular, I've said this many times, I think that the employees in DCF have some of the most difficult jobs in state government, and like you said, very frontward facing to people in need. And it's one thing if you can figure out a way to help them, you know, like the person in this who wrote this. It's another thing if you've done everything you possibly can do to help them and you can't. You don't have another answer for them. And yet you know that they are in need. So I just, you know, want to say very, very sincerely that we appreciated your vulnerability today, and appreciated the other people who aren't here in person, but who have also shared their stories. And I'm not exactly sure what we can do, but it won't just stop here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hey, folks, Lori, we're done. We're going to